Welcome, everybody, to Season 3, Episode 2 of the Be'in podcast. This week is a very special episode. Obviously, every week is a special episode, but specifically this one, because if you see the title of this episode, it is about a brand new seminary that is going to be starting this upcoming fall. The person that is spearheading this project is none other than Rabbi Dr. Noam Weinberg. And I said to myself, when I was planning the season, I had to bring in the person that is literally running this entire seminary and building it from the foundation. And I want to know why he's doing it and all the things that are going into the start and the foundation of Midreshet Ora. Rabbi Dr. Noam Weinberg, as you're going to hear in this episode, has such an impressive track record of all the things he's done in America before he made Aliyah 2-3 years ago. He worked in many different schools on a middle school level, a high school level. He runs programs in the summers with NCSY, and he's literally interacted with hundreds of thousands of people on all different age levels. And he also has a tremendous knowledge, and it's just so impressive to hear how many degrees he's gotten. And we talk about that in the episode of just, he's not only a rabbi, he is a doctor, and there's a lot that goes in behind that title. And it was a phenomenal episode. I'm filming this after we just spoke for the past hour. I'm absolutely pumped for you guys to listen to our conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking, and I want you guys to listen to my episode with Rabbi Dr. Noam Weinberg. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the Israel Gap Year Be'in podcast. I'm your host, Avi Proctor, and in each episode, we get Be'in in depth into the remarkable lives of individuals in Israel who dedicate themselves to inspiring the next generation of Klal Yisrael. Rabbi Dr. Noam Weinberg, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on the virtual studio. So first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join me right now.
Thank you. It's an honor.
And it is in my honor as well, because, and I'll say this publicly, I am a very big fan of yourself. When I worked for NCSY a few years ago, I've seen the work that you do in action, and I'm an admirer of everything that you've accomplished and that you've done and what you're trying to do. And that is obviously what we're going to talk about today. And there's so much to talk about. So the topic of today, and we're going to dissect it in so many different ways, is just chinuch based, all about growth, all about finding yourself. And this is mamish, your specialty. And then also, we got to address the elephant in the room, which is the most amazing thing that's going on right now, which is the new seminary, Midreshet Ora, that you're starting for next year. So everyone that's listening, sit tight. What do you say? Your beard has gotten significantly better over the past few years. Just say.
To receive the shefa of Eretz Yisrael. All right, yeah, but Midreshet Ora, we're here. We're focused.
We're going to choose about that. Okay, so obviously before we jump into it, there might be people listening to this that have no idea who you are, and I want to hear a little bit more of a background about yourself. So how did we get here today? Give me and the listeners a little bit of a rundown, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Let me start from the beginning. I'm a small town guy. Grew up in West Hartford, Connecticut. Loved it. Just an absolutely amazing place to grow up. Went to MTA for sophomore to senior year, then ended up working on a kibbutz for a year, my year in Israel. Worked on kibbutz Tirat Tzvi in the date fields. It was awesome. One of the most spiritual experiences ever. I actually came back and went to YU and started doing stand-up in Chicago city limits. I got an amazing internship to work with Tommy Hilfiger, which at that time was like the place to be. And I had one of those moments, where I had to make a decision. What am I going to follow my dream and work on Saturday Night Live at all costs, or was I going to keep Shabbos? It was like that moment, right? So I decided on Shabbos and Hashem and Torah. I think it was a good decision. I'm confident it was a good decision. And I said, look, I'm gonna take my talents and I'm gonna use them to bring people closer to God. And that's what I did. And I started out dovetailing academically and professionally in the chinuch, on the chinuch route. So everything that I did was specifically geared towards being a better mechanech. So I started off getting smicha, obviously, from YU, and then I got a master's, my first master's in Jewish education, and then I got a second master's in school administration. Then I went for my doctorate. I worked with Dr. Pelkovitz. He was my advisor, and with the focus was adolescent psychology, and I focused specifically on adolescent religious development. My doctoral thesis was the complexity of modern orthodoxy and its impact on the religious development of modern Orthodox adolescents. At the same time, I went to Columbia University Business School to get a degree in a postgraduate certification in not-for-profit management, which I thought was important when building out not-for-profits. What I found was, as I started to evolve in the world of Jewish education, people were coming to me and asking me questions, not only about chinuch, but also about life. And I felt that I needed, even though I thought I was a good Bal Eitzah, and I think I'm a good Bal Eitzah, but I felt like I needed a little bit more. So I went for a degree in life coaching, and I went for another master's in marriage and family therapy, and then I went for another degree in trauma-focused ACT therapy. So what happened concurrent to that evolution was I was a Rebbe in Frisch. So I started off in MTA. I was a Rebbe in MTA in Petach for my first year. Then I worked in Frisch as a Rebbe for 4 years, which is awesome. In the afternoons, I was a Rebbe in the morning, and then I was a Rebbe in Moriah in middle school, and also in Mayanot for a year. After 4 years, I got an amazing opportunity to become the assistant principal of HALB, of the lower school, to work with Rabbi Heshi Glass, which was really, really good for me. It was a really good stepping stone. When Rabbi Glass left, I left with him, and I became the associate principal of the Moriah School in Englewood, New Jersey for 4 years, where I was also in charge of the middle school. And at that point, I had an amazing opportunity to work with somebody who became my mentor and just an amazing person in my life, Dr. Daniel Vitow, who's world-renowned in the world of Jewish education. I became the principal of North Shore Hebrew Academy High School for the past 13 years. At that time, I built out a small private practice where I was a relationship coach, and I worked with a lot of different people and subsets, and you'll see how this all kind of like comes together. After leaving North Shore, and the reason why I left was because my wife and I made Aliyah last year, I opened up a private practice here in Israel and killing it. Like, it's huge, it's great, working with people in Israel, working in America, having lots of different demographics. I work primarily cradle to grave, I would say. A lot of young people who are navigating the dating world. Recently, I think it was like 2 weeks ago, I got my 152nd person married, which is like awesome, huge,
Wow.
huge, which is huge. I work with a huge number of shadchanim. I work very closely with the Dr. Shadchan, with Lisa Elephant. I work closely with YU Connects and with other individual shadchanim. Do a lot of training, which is really important. I work with young people who are newly married, that are struggling in the newly married space, 1 to 7 years. I work with parents and children, and I also work with people who are married and either want to strengthen their relationships or are having difficulty in their relationships. I am trained in narrative therapy and also Bowen family systems. So now, how does that even translate into Midreshet Ora? So here's what happened. What happened is that last year, around Pesach time, somebody called me up and said, listen, we have an issue. And the issue is that there were a lot of girls that did not get into seminary last year. And the seminaries were great, and they accepted, and they expanded, but it's not ideal. The problem is that there are hundreds of more girls, according to the data, in North American yeshiva high schools this year than there were last year. And not one person is opening up a new seminary. So what happens? Like, who deals with that? So he said, listen, Noam, here's the thing. Nobody's opening it, and most people can't do it. They don't have your background, they don't have your experience, they don't have your confidence. So how's it going to happen? You need to get your uniform back on and get in the game. And that is how we got to Midreshet Ora.
Wow. First of all, I thought I knew you, and I definitely we could write a whole book about all the things. I'm curious, by the way, just as a fun question, How many years of your life have you spent in like a school setting based off of the amount of doctorates and degrees that you have?
I have spent a lot of time. I mean, it's basically my whole life, which is crazy because I was such a terrible student. And at a certain point, like something clicked. They used to make me take out. I used to be in the hallways, like growing up in the Hebrew Academy of Greater Hartford in Bloomfield, Connecticut. I would walk into class and I would get kicked out of class. Like stand in the hallways, take out staples from the walls. My parents recently moved. They found like Noam was suspended today because ... right? But like at a certain point, it kind of clicks. And you realize, maybe I actually can do this, and maybe I actually do have abilities and talents and potentiality to affect the world in a positive way. And when that happens, you can actually you make moves.
1,000%. Hopefully your parents are smiling out today and shepping nachas from all that you've done. I want to jump obviously right into the topic, and hopefully now that people hear a little bit of your background, they know that you're very qualified to hopefully speak on what we're about to talk about. And obviously we'll talk about Midreshet Ora and more in the specifics and whatnot. But the baseline that I want to start at right now is having a conversation about what you've seen in terms of today's generation, in terms of growth, the things they go through, and also the languages that speak to them, right? Because you've been in this world dealing with, as you said, cradle to grave essentially for so many years. So start and talk to me about what you've seen in terms of how is the language in terms of talking and dealing with primarily teenagers in the past 15, 20 plus years. How has that evolved and changed? Where do you kind of see that going for right now?
That's a great question. It's a lot. There's a lot to talk about. So I'll tell you as follows, just in my own experience, right? I have seen a huge shift in the types of mechanchim that are going into chinuch, right? It used to be that there was a phrase that people used to say, those who can do and those who can't go into education, right? Which is a terrible thing to hear, right? It was something that was, I don't know, not necessarily held in the highest regard. And it was reflected in not everybody, but a lot of people that were going into the world of Jewish education. And it was boring and it was monotonous and there was no relevancy and children were not being seen as potential adults. At some point, they were just seen as people that you just receptacles of information. That's one piece. The second piece is I found that there was no conversation of the soul. There was no conversation of spirituality. I remember when I was in MTA, we were learning Chai Adam, as if like any adolescent would ever be interested in like learning Chai Adam. And we learned it only because like that was like the holdover from the old Litvish way of learning halacha. That's what they used to do. Where was the conversation of religious development? Where was the conversation of spirituality? Where was the conversation about accessing that? Learning how to label emotions, learning how to understand oneself, accentuating individuality, helping people grow in a way that was right for them. That was something that I felt was missing tremendously. I think that one of the great opportunities that I had when I went to Frisch, which was the first year that Kalmanstein came in, that Dr. Kalmanstein came in, was my first year. And it was me, and it was Rav Judah Michel, and it was Rabbi Bashis, and it was a lot of chaver that were like really thirsty and hungry to inspire kids. And that's what we did. And we started it out. Breakfast time, I used to play guitar in the hallway and sing with kids. Friday mornings, I used to take my class, dim the lights, play my Khalil and tell Reb Shlomo stories, and all the kids that were kicked out of class would come in and listen to it. And you know what? It made a difference. We started talking a language of the soul. And I really think that was the fertile ground that things kind of like grew out from, where people started to recognize the fact that if we don't start to get on this and start to talk in a language that allowed children, adolescents, to recognize their own relevancy, then we're going to lose them. We're going to lose a generation, and it's a huge problem, right? And that's what we did, and that's what we blew out, and it caught on like wildfire. And there's a reason why. There's a reason why, Hasidus became so mainstream, I think, right? Not like hardcore Williamsburg Hasidus, but like, I don't know, maybe more Hasidus of the original, of the OG Hasidus, of the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh and Rabbi Nachman and the Piaseczner Rebbe, which are, at some point we'll talk, I hope, maybe a little bit about like the figures in my life that guide me in that. But it speaks to the soul. And I think that current mechanchim are an outgrowth of that, and they recognize that.
I think that, by the way, I think it's a phenomenal point, and obviously the fact that you've realized that so long ago, that at the end of the day, like, every single person is their own world in themselves, and dealing with every single person, as I'm sure you know, has so many different intricacies, and speaking to their soul is a phenomenal point in a way of connecting to people. Now I'm gonna throw a question back at you in terms of when you deal with so many kids and saying to yourself, okay, let's try to find a unique approach to chinuch, where it's speaking to specifically to students. What shows you, I guess you could say, certain, I don't want to call them markers, but how do you know that when you're dealing with students, if you're getting through to them or not? Like, what shows you that they're connecting to the teaching style that you're kind of giving over?
It's a great question, and I'll tell you that when you watch students evolve in this realm, what you're basically looking for is the vulnerability that they have. Meaning what? So I'll take you back 27 years to when I was a Rebbe in Frisch, or 25 years when I was a Rebbe in Frisch. So that Friday morning Khalil and Reb Shlomo stories that I would tell, okay? This is how it began. The first week I did it, kids would laugh. Second week I did it, they would murmur. Third week I did it, they would close their eyes and sway with it. That's how you knew that you were getting through. They were allowing themselves to be vulnerable. They allowed themselves to receive the spirituality that we were trying to harness, and they weren't embarrassed about it. That's on the spiritual. That's on the spiritual.
Right. Right. I think it's a phenomenal point. It's just like sometimes when it comes to dealing with students and chinuch, obviously as a whole, it takes a lot of patience, and many people would start something like that, and as you said, on the first week they're not getting it, and they'll be like, oh, like this is just not working, I'm not going to do it, and staying patient is something that's very, very important. And I used to start off
my class. I used to put a candy in high school with my 11th grade honors Gemara class, which I'm not an honors Gemara guy. I'm like a Rabbi Nachman guy. But okay. But anyway, I would put a candy on each person's desk, and we would start shir holding the candy up and saying, Torah is sweet like this candy, and making a shahakol. The kids would eat their candies, and I would start diving into whatever it was that we were doing. That is, it's a shift. It's a shift in the way that we were mechanech kids. And I want to tell you something. I have students that today will come over to me and say, I remember when you used to put lollipops on our desks. And you want to know something? They associate it. We can't hide from the way that our brains work. Our brains make these associations. A sweet candy, sweet Torah, loving learning. It's huge.
It's so true, and that's why, when a kid has an upsharon or a halakha, they give them, they teach them the alpha beis, and they plop honey on the letters, and it gives them that positive connotation.
Absolutely.
What I'm thinking about right now is obviously, the way of chinuch that you're doing today is more, I'll say socially acceptable, right? People know that you're doing different things. You bring more chasidus in terms of your teaching, but how do you make sure you're not I'll use it in quotations, watering down Torah, meaning you gotta evolve with kids. You gotta know where they're at. You gotta do that. But how do you keep that authenticity essentially?
Well, because you're not moving away from the importance and value of text, and it's not the fluff of it, right? It's the self-development. It's the accentuation of individuality. That's what you're looking for, and that you could do in anything. Meaning, when I taught Chumash, okay, we would do regular Chumash be'iyun. We would learn Pshat and Rashi. We would learn Pshat and the Ramban. We would understand that there was a machlokes. We would analyze that machlokes, read it back into the Pshat, and then have a meaningful discussion and learn life lessons and be able to extrapolate ideas that would allow us to grow and learn about our own selves. That's how you know that you're not moving on. It's not about the, let's leave the text. I'm a huge text guy, but I believe that text can be understood and appreciated in different ways. Text can be used as a springboard, and text can be used as something which is just gives you a chiyus in and of itself. Both of those are important and valuable.
I think it's a phenomenal point, and it's just like, there's so much to take from Torah, and like sometimes one person
100%.
would read text and obviously take out their own peshat, and I mean that's literally Gemara and a lot of the machlokas that we see in Torah. I'm curious, by the way, from all your experience, right, working with students in high schools. Now, I mean, people know you. A lot of people know you. We didn't even talk about this, that you currently run NCSY Jolt, and you founded that, and you work in camps, and now that you're about to start a seminary, I'm curious if you have any examples of where the traditional, call it, style of chinuch and teaching might have like fallen short, essentially.
What do you mean by that? Explain to me what you mean by falling short.
Meaning, have you seen from your experience of, hey, you're working in a school and you're like, okay, I see how this teacher is teaching their class, and they're just not getting it, or they're doing this and they're teaching this wrong, and does that make sense?
Yeah, I'll tell you. I think that there are things that I see that I think are, and I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for in terms of an explanation or an example, but
say whatever you want. By the way, there's no right or wrong answer.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. So something that I find with kids that are going through the high school system, and something that you see sometimes in chinuch in different camps, and sometimes that you'll see in seminaries and yeshivas are. This is such a rando example, but it's something that I think is important. A lot of biographies of Gedolim, a lot of things that like people have Bakiyas and like Rebbetzin Kanievsky, and Bakiyas and who was a tzaddikus, by the way, and Bakiyas and like in like the Kleisenberger Rebbe, like also was a tzaddik yisod olam. They are amazing people that we can learn from, but they were shaped by Torah. They were shaped by learning. They were shaped by an understanding of themselves, an understanding of their value, of their self-worth, of where they are in this world, and what their purpose is in this world. We can learn from their greatness. We can learn from the greatness of Gedolei Yisrael, both men and women. As important, if not more important, though, is the circle back to how do I get to a place where I can reclaim my own identity? Like, ultimately, who am I? Ultimately, what have I learned from them that I can now bring back to myself? And I think that when things are left as a standalone as opposed to a means to an end. So I'm using an example of biographies, but it could be anything. I think, again, I have a Seder in Gemara every day. Learning Gemara is important. I happen to believe that, again, there is a profoundly important place of learning Gemara Lishma that exists. But I think that when you're talking about young people, adolescents, they need to be able to do self-work with that which they learn. So learning Gemara is important, and you have to teach kids how to make a laning on a piece of Gemara, and like Torah Sheba'al Peh, that's the foundation of everything. But if you can't make it relevant, if you can't bring it back into your life and understand whatever it is, halacha or hashkafa, based on that, it becomes less relevant for young people. And ultimately, they lose out going forward because they make those associations. So
I'm so glad
it's
you
a
brought.
flip. It's a flip in the way that that we present these things.
Completely. First of all, I'm glad that you brought up the biography example. I wasn't even thinking about that. That would be your answer, but it brings me back. I remember I was speaking about this with my brother recently when he was in yeshiva. The one of the mashgichim came over to him, and at a certain point, he said, "It is usher for you to read a biography. You're not getting what you need out of it, because sometimes you look at these gedolim and these people that are on such heights, and you're comparing yourself to them, or you try to emulate them, and then you lose that individuality." And on the topic of gedolim and biographies and everything, you channeled me perfectly into my next thought that I had, which was, who are some of your role models? Like your chinuch and your mindset, as you said before, is the PSS the Rebbe and Reb Nachman and everything. But take me through who some of those people are, how you got to enjoying their Torah, what did you enjoy about them, and then we'll kind of dissect that.
Okay, good. Role models of mine, I would say, in the Gedolim world, right? So there are a couple that I have. Rabbi Nachman, who saves my life every day and reminds me that I always have new opportunities and a new lease on life, irrespective of what yesterday looked like. His Torah is very, very important to me. The Pisas Rebbe, whose singular focus, the way I understood him and the way I understand him, is the important role that individuality plays in Avodas Hashem. And without really understanding yourself, you can't understand God, you can't understand other people, and you can't have meaningful relationships. That's super important to me. Rav Kook is a very important figure in my life. His Ahavas Yisrael and his love for Eretz Yisrael are things that really resonate with me, and I feel very connected to his Torah. Rav Soloveitchik, his Derech HaLimud was my Rebbe's Derech HaLimud. I learned by Rav Parnas for many years. So the way that I learn, the way that I analyze, the way that I understand things, the way that I appreciate seeing the world in certain ways is really based off of the Rav. And there are other figures also, just more peripheral, that have played a huge role in my life, and not all of them are Jewish, by the way. John Dewey and his approach to experiential education I hold from very, very much. Individuals like Murray Bowen, who I told you I'm trained in Bowen family systems, the way he understands the interrelationship of people in relationships and how that works and how we feed off of each other, and the need to learn how to differentiate oneself emotionally as a means to bolstering one's own sense of self. Super important to me in my life. And then family members. I mean, I look at my parents and their work ethic, and that is super important to me. And that's where I derive my work ethic. I look at my in-laws and their tzidkus. They hold up the world. That's something that I aspire to. My wife, having patience with me. That's something that that I aspire to have. But it's something that I try and learn from everybody, and I really believe that that's something that brings me to where I am in my life, by taking the opportunity to see people and to appreciate them and to appreciate their depth.
By the way, all these role models that you're saying are mamish amazing, and I definitely enjoy a lot of their Torah, especially when I was in yeshiva. Rabbi Nachman was my guy. Knowing that these figures, what were we going to say?
I was going to say I forgot one gadol that's like very, very important to my heart, and that's Ishbitz. So the Ishbitz Rebbe, the Mea Shiloach. I write out chidushim. Are you on my? Do you get my stuff?
No, get me in here.
On my Hasidus and psychology chat, I have like 400 people. So I send out.
No, but also for myself, yes, send it to me, and then also I'll put it in the show notes. So if anybody's listening,
okay, that'd be awesome.
Is that possible?
It's great. So like, Ishbitz is MS. Ishbitz is it's an outgrowth of Pshischa. I'm a Pshischa Einagel. I'm an Einagel of the Yira Kadosh, and it's an outgrowth of that. It's a way of looking at the world in a very, very unique, nuanced way, but a way that makes you think about things, a way that's very real, that's very human. And it speaks to me tremendously. I just had to put that out.
No, I'm glad that you chimed in. And what I was going to ask you is that, you're mentioning all these amazing figures that you've learned their Torah from, and you got inspired. When you're teaching to your students, is one of your goals to try to say, wow, like I've really enjoyed the teaching from all these people. Like, let me try to give it over to them and see if they're going to connect to it. Is that part of your teaching style?
100%. Yes. And also, I want them to push back and say, thank you, but this is what speaks to me and it's different. I want that also. Meaning, part of healthy adolescent development is this concept of identity formation, right? And so what we want kids to do is to be able to understand themselves on a deeper level. I want to present what speaks to me. I want you to figure out whether or not it speaks to you. And if it doesn't, then let's work together to try and understand what it is that does speak to you. We don't have to share it, but I want you to understand that there's a beauty in it, but also it may be a telltale sign that it's not necessarily the path that you want to take, which is also great. My wife always made sure that, and we're very clear about this with our children. I have one son that wears a shtreimel. I have one son that's in Shalavim. My daughters are in a lot of different places. Everybody, Baruch Hashem, is Shomer Torah mitzvos. The idea, though, is that, I used to tell, so my youngest son, when he was bar mitzvah, he wanted to wear a gartel. I was like, yes. Yes, thank you, Hashem. And as time went on, he became like a big chassid of Rav Shechter in YU, which is awesome, and I love that for him also. But every now and then, I would be like, why can't he just wear a gartel? My wife would be like, listen, our value set is to give our kids our Torah and our spirituality and our understanding of what a good, healthy relationship with Hashem looks like. But ultimately, they need to make decisions, and we need to be supportive of the path that they want to take. And she's right. It was a real Chanoch Lenar al Pi Darko moment for me, but really supporting those paths, and that's very important. And that's how I view my students also, in the same way.
I love what you're saying, because at the end of the day, it's just, every kid, as I was saying before, is like the chinuch is a world in and of itself for every single kid, and right now what I'm thinking about is I kind of want to touch on, we're getting to the conversation of Midreshet Ora, but as we get there, talking about Dafka, the year in Israel, right, and the year in seminary, since you're dealing with kids that are currently in high school right now, and a lot of them that went into the year in Israel, so I'm really curious to hear what you're going to have to say in that. What do you feel that you've seen that when students go from high school to Israel, they begin to crave something, obviously, because we see a lot of life changes. We see a lot of growth happening. So what is your take on that? What do you think students begin to crave once they get to Israel that begins that growth process?
I think they crave uniqueness. I think they crave the ability to be vulnerable, and I think they really become more comfortable with the idea of soul searching. It's first of all, it's very age appropriate, and you would expect that. But I think that when a school does it right, and this is really what I'm trying to do with Midreshet Ora, what you do is you are working on building the confidence and the self-esteem of young people, creating a dynamic where their decisions are value-based as opposed to validation-based, and we'll get to that in a little bit, I think. But getting them to a place where it's okay to cry when you're sad, and it's okay to laugh when you're happy, and it's okay to say, I need some time to just be with myself and meditate and create my own tefillos and sit by myself in a restaurant, or do whatever it is that speaks to you and find that path that's right for you. I think the year in Israel is huge for that. The flip side is there's a huge detox that needs to happen. And I don't know if this is where you're going with it, but I'm going to just say it because I...
Say it.
There's a huge detox that needs to happen. Our young people are the unfortunate collateral damage of a greater society that is totally validation based. They get it from social media, they get it from their friends. You tell me I look good, I feel good about myself. You tell me I look bad, I feel bad about myself. The way I see myself is the way that you see me. The shift needs to be to bring up and to help young people evolve to a place where they are able to make decisions that are based on their values. The way you distinguish between a young person who lacks a sense of self and lacks a sense of self-worth, and a young person that has a strong sense of self, that is confident and resilient, is the difference between a person that craves the validation of others and a person that cares less about the validation of others and more about making decisions that speak to them and speak to their soul. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of effort. There's a huge amount that has to go in to doing that. It's hard work, by the way. It's hard work. It's much easier to not focus on that piece of it. My belief is that to do Jewish education right, you need to spend the time, and it's sweat equity. You really need to put in that time in the beginning to break down the cliques, to focus on accentuating individuality, to focus on showing the beauty of each person. I don't care how rich you are, I don't care how poor you are, I don't care how tall you are, how short you are. Nothing makes a difference. You're all on the same playing field. Everybody who's here is here because you're a Mavakesh Hashem. That's the baseline.
You got me sold. So, I mean, if I had a daughter, I could sign her up for seminary right now. But it seems like a very beautiful point that I think you're bringing out that I want to highlight right now is that you're connecting the world of religious growth and emotional well-being and kind of like merging those two worlds together, which is very, very important. So talk to me a little bit. I want to kind of get.
And I think it's unique also, by the way. And I think that's the boutique niche, so to speak, of what Midreshet Ora is really trying to do. And what I really believe very strongly in is there is a huge emotional element to doing this right. It's about understanding context. It's about understanding contextual relevancies when dealing with adolescents. That's something which is super important. By the way, I tell everybody, I'm not I know we haven't gotten into the Midreshet Ora piece.
No, we're in it. We're in it. You talk about it right now.
We're in it. Okay. I'm not creating a therapeutic school. That's not what this is at all. But it's an emotionally healthy school. It understands the realities of young people. It means that I understand the fact that if you are in late adolescence, your prefrontal cortex is not fully developed, which means that you're going to be at points impulsive. You're going to struggle at times with emotional regulation. That's normal. It's okay. Not only is it okay, it's human. And that's the Ishbitz in me, and that's the Rabbi Nachman in me, and that's the Piasesna in me, and that's Rav Soloveitchik in me, and that's Rav Kook in me. It's embracing humanity. It's seeing a beauty in being normal and being human, and being and being fallible. That's great. And it's learning how to accept that and embrace it.
So great. So Gishmak. And I'm thinking about B'ezrat Hashem, there are going to be a lot of people listening to this, either parents, prospective parents, or prospective students that are going to click on this episode because I think I'm going to title it, "This is why I'm starting a new seminary." Something along the line of that. We'll get people on there. But no, Mamish, this is what's going on. And I want to talk obviously about it a little more, is that if somebody's listening to this right now and they're in high school and they are, God willing, by the time this episode comes out, it's like in the middle of the kishkas of when you have
prime
time, right? Prime time. If someone is listening to this, how do they know if Midreshet Ora, for example, is a place for them? What type of girl, if they're listening to this, would you say is like, Midreshet Ora is my place?
If you are a young person that is interested in self-growth and self-development in a way that you can feel safe, in a way that allows you to push boundaries in terms of the way that you think about things, allows you to feel free to ask questions without judgment, to learn a new language of social currency where you don't have to conform to other people, where you could be yourself and respected for yourself and accentuate it in that way, then Midreshet Ora is for you. If you're an individual that wants to widen the doors a little bit and come to a place where everybody is on the same academic level or within that bell curve of being on the same academic level, but believe that you can have a profoundly meaningful dialogue with somebody that learns a little bit different, which is the reason why we have text-based classes that are in-depth textually and text-based classes that use the text as a springboard. But then, in the base medrash, you could have two people having real dialogue and learning from each other. Then this is the place where we move away from the monochromatic pigeonholing of Jewish education, where it's okay to look different. Not only is it okay, there's a value in looking different and believing in that and loving that and loving that about yourself and loving that about somebody else. That's what Midreshet Ora is all about.
It's beautiful, and I'm thinking about this right now. You know, I want to hear your answer on this one. Obviously, is that you've been in chinuch, as we've been discussing throughout this entire podcast for so many years, and this is on paper your first year running a seminary. But because of your experiences and dealing with high school kids and seeing people for so many years, do you feel like this is your first year, technically, in the seminary space?
Yeah, and there's a lot that I had to learn about it, by the way, also. Meaning, I'm very honest. I'm very emistic about what I know and what I don't know, and I was Shol Eitzah, a lot of different people. One person in particular, Rabbi Katz helped me out a lot from MNY. He was really been with me, holding my hand through the process. There's a lot that I don't know. There's a lot that I need to learn, and that's fine. And that's the reason why I'm Shol Eitzah. It's the reason why I'm not embarrassed to ask. I'm happy to ask. I'm happy to learn. But in terms of just the educational structure of it, so that comes naturally to me. How to work with kids, how to build a successful institution, what that looks like, all of those pieces. There are things that I need to understand, and I'm understanding it, and things make sense to me now. But it feels in many ways it's my first year, and that's exciting also. I'm excited to do that together with these young women that are applying. I'm excited to take that journey. And by the way, I tell people all the time, look, I'm honest. I'm open. I know it's scary. It's a first year school. It's okay. It's okay. But you know what? Somebody has to be Nachshon ben Aminadav. And by the way, somebody has to be courageous enough to take the first step, or else we're stuck with a problem. And so when people say, what are you looking for? I'm looking for courageous parents and courageous young women that are excited to take a first step and do something new and do something different. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I mean, it's amazing, and it's an opportunity. I say this often. We say Reishis Chachma Yiras Hashem. The beginning of wisdom is Yiras Hashem, and I ask this question to everybody. I say, what does Yira mean? They say it means fear. It does, but it also means awe. You could come to a ratius of something, to the beginning of something, with fear, or you could come with awe, with wide-eyed wonderment, viewing it as an opportunity, as something which is special and unique. There are different ways that we can approach things. I need a person who's going to see it and say, wow, this is amazing. I can actually be a builder and not be on the sideline. That's phenomenal. Not everybody wants that. Not everybody needs that. But there are a lot of girls who are applying. So it's telling me that there's a need that needs to be filled here.
There is definitely needed. I'm glad you addressed the obviously the elephant in the room that people would always say is, oh, it's a first year seminary. Is it worth taking the risk on it? But I think people could tell through this podcast that at the end of the day, if there's one person that is hopefully qualified enough to start a seminary based off their experience and willing to take the risk on that leader, it would hopefully be you. In my humble opinion. Now give us for those that, by the way, hopefully a lot of people that are listening to this met you over the past month in your trip.
I hope so.
Across the U.S. So just give me a little bit.
And Canada. We can't forget about Canada.
Oh my! What about England? Did you go there?
Yeah, I was in touch with England. Actually, yesterday I had a conversation. There may be some girls who are interested, so I may be going there to have a parlor meeting, and I would love actually to have some young women from the UK come and join the ranks of Midreshet Ora's first year.
Phenomenal. I'm putting you on the spot here because I think this is very important for people to recognize is that one of the hardest things about working in the yeshiva and seminary space is the time of the year in like November when all the teachers get up, they leave their families, they go across the world, and they pitch their schools and whatnot. You left for I think it was almost a month. Am I wrong?
I did leave. I did leave for a month.
So, I want you to talk about that trip a little bit because I can't imagine how hard it was. But I think the dedication that you have to what you're starting just shows, and I think it's important for people to realize because when you show up to a school and you pitch, people think, oh, he landed from Israel, he came to speak at my school, and he's probably going back in a few days. But like, what was that trip like for you? What were some of the feelings you got from people interested in Midreshet Ora? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Okay, I will tell you the following. It was a very long trip. I cannot be accused of not putting in 100% of Ishtadlus into this. It was up and down the East Coast. It was Florida. It was Maryland. It was New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Cleveland, Chicago, LA, Philly, Toronto. It was flying around during a government shutdown where when I left Toronto, my flight was delayed by 2.5 hours. And then we were on the plane for 2.5 hours and they canceled my flight back to New York. But I had a 10:15 the next day in North Shore Hebrew Academy High School. And I rented a car and drove through the night through a snowstorm from Toronto all the way to the Poconos until I hit New Jersey. I'm dedicated to this, man. I mean, this is the real deal.
Wow, what a story!
It was a lot.
Did you make it to the presentation?
And I
did you make it to North Shore in time? Like how that
I did. I made it to my daughter's apartment in Woodmere, and I davened and fell asleep on the couch for an hour, showered, and then jumped in the car and got there on time, Baruch Hashem. But yeah, I mean, it was nonstop. I came back to Israel. I'm here for a week. I'm going back on Monday. You people are seeing this after this happens, but I'm going back a week after being here to do recruitment, to do interviews, because it's really important to me. And people are like, nah, you don't have to worry. Like, just do it on Zoom. Like, people get it. No. If I'm doing this, I'm doing this. If I'm doing this right, I'm doing it right. People need to know that I am serious about this. I'm serious about making my mark in the seminary world. I'm serious about making a change in Jewish education, which I've always been passionate about. And to be honest, I'm serious about making a difference in the Jewish community and ensuring that every girl has a place to go.
Phenomenal point. And I was literally going to ask you what gets you pumped up, but you basically just answered my question.
Pumps me up.
So obviously, answering that question of what gets you pumped up, another thing that gets you pumped up is hopefully seeing the types of students that are coming for next year. Now, you went to America, you're about to go back, and you really know the girls that are applying. So what type of girl, Tachas, is for Midreshet Ora that would connect? Are you looking for and stuff like that?
It's a great question, and I'll answer it in several different ways. First of all, we have, Baruch Hashem, like a strong critical mass of girls that have made it clear that they want this to be their first choice, which is awesome. I do want people to remember that part of the reason why I'm doing this is to help the Jewish community. It's to make a space for girls that are amazing girls, but the seminaries can only take a certain number, that then they have a place that they can go and really thrive, and that's the Midreshet Ora. So it's the girls who are coming lechatchila, of which, I mean, we're getting close. We're really moving in numbers. I mean, every single time I do or have a conversation with somebody, I'm like, oh, that's another submission of an application. It's like it's mind-boggling, and I'm like super blessed, Baruch Hashem. So it's both. It's giving girls who lechatchila want a place like this to have a place, and it's also having the room to help the Jewish community. So that's number one. Number two is Midreshet Ora is not for a girl whose parents are forcing them to go to Israel for the year and they're just looking for like a landing place that they can like go out and drink and come back and go, like, that's not what this is about, right? And people say, well, what type of girl do you want? And I say this all the time, and I say it with like real, from a place of realness. When I have a tish on a Thursday night, I want you to cry with me when I cry. And I want you to laugh with me when I laugh. But if you're going to be in the back on your phone, Midreshet Ora is not for you. That's not the type of girl that I'm taking. That's not the type of girl that's coming. Of the girls that have applied, I keep checking in with the schools. Tell me about this one. Tell me about that one. They're self-selecting in the same space. Middle, strong level girls who are serious about learning and serious about growing. And serious about wanting to create strong friendships and break down barriers. Because ultimately that speaks to their own growth.
I love the point that you said, because I'm glad that we're addressing this right now, because oftentimes when you have a new school that comes about, a lot of people might look at it and say, okay, this is maybe my third option. This is a school for people that don't get into seminaries. And I just have to echo another point. If anybody who's listening to this did not hear the podcast that I made with my wife last year about advice when going and getting, and in the process of picking a seminary, just because a girl does not get accepted to a seminary does not mean they're a bad person. There are so many amazing girls that don't get accepted just because schools cannot handle the size,
And that's my point. And that I view as part of the avoda here. It's tough enough to be a young person in general. It's even more difficult to be a young female. It's even more difficult to be a young female in the Orthodox Jewish community. And then on top of that, to be rejected from schools just because there isn't space, even though you're awesome. Why? So at least let me take a little bit off of your plate. Come, have an amazing experience. Learn and grow and thrive. Understand yourself. Learn to love yourself. That's what we offer.
Love that.
And by the way, part of the beauty of it is the staff that we're hiring. People who are enthusiastic. People who are seasoned professionals, my age, older, younger, doesn't make a difference. I've spent a long time training young people, young professionals who've come into the field of chinuch. I'm excited to do that, and I'm excited to do that with this as well. But to me, I don't care about the age. Age is irrelevant to me. What I care about is that you're bringing a youthful enthusiasm, that you are inspiring young people, that you're doing this because this is your call, that this is your avodas hakodesh. And the girls feel it, and they're taken by it. Because how could you not be?
100%. And speaking about having an amazing experience, you're great at setting me up for my next questions that I always have in my mind. Is that you've run Israel programs for years, and you know how to logistically run a program here, and you've seen that. But then also there's the aspect of you're physically in the land of Israel, and as you mentioned before, after living in America for so many years, you made Aliyah, you moved to Israel. So talk to me about how does the land of Eretz Yisrael play in the year in Midreshet Ora?
That's a great question, and I appreciate you bringing that up. I'll tell you that Chazal say avira da'ara machkim, that the air of Israel makes you smarter. But the truth of the matter is that I believe that the entire land is a fertile educational classroom. Everything in Israel is an opportunity to learn and grow. And that's the reason why part of what I really believe is that every tiyul that we take, every hike that we take, every opportunity that we have a Shabbaton around the country once a month, right? Every place that we go brings us to a different level of understanding ourselves. It takes us to a place of understanding cultural differences and seeing the beauty of the people and the land of Israel. But it's more than that. It's not just hiking up Masada and then passing out from dehydration like every person does on the top right before the sun rises. It's about climbing up Masada and learning about Gevura and making that part of who you are, understanding what Gevura means to you. It's not about taking a hike that's a little bit more challenging than you're used to. It's about understanding what your limits are. It's about understanding how to move outside your comfort zone. It's about learning how to push yourself in ways that you didn't think you were able to before. Using the land as a classroom. That's what I believe Israel is so perfect for. It's there. It's waiting for us to use it. Hashem gave it to us to use it. There's a reason why Hashem did that. And I'll tell you just a beautiful idea. I don't know if this is a place to.
Oh, it's
to
the
give,
place.
To
Give me
give
some
over
Torah. I want some.
I'm going to tell you something beautiful. So one of my favorite Torahs that I heard, and I don't know who it's attributed to. I just heard it, and it made my soul sing. If you look at the topography of Israel, so something very interesting happens. You have two bodies of water. You have the Mediterranean on one side, and you have the Kinneret and the Yam HaMelech and the Dead Sea on the other side. But what's so interesting is the following, is that the Kinneret is fed by aquifers in the Golan, okay? And that is a water source, and also from rain. And it's teeming with life. The Dead Sea receives its water from the Kinneret through underground sources. But Yam HaMelech is dead. There's no life in it at all. How could it be that one place is teeming with life and it gives its water to another body and there is no life? And the answer is because when you take and you give, there's a chiyus, there's a life. When you just take, there is no life. There is no chiyus. You see, those are lessons that you could learn from the land of Israel. Imagine growing in a way where you appreciate that it's not just about what you receive, it's also about what you give. And you see it from the land that Hashem gave to us. Nowhere in the world can you see that, except for Israel. That's what I see when I look at the map, when I go on a tiyul, when I take young people and I move them outside their comfort zones. That's what I see. Opportunities for self-growth and self-development.
That was epic, and I'm so glad that you shared that, because if not, I wouldn't have had that vote in my back pocket, and I think that's a really...
You're good. Yeah, use it, by the way. Use it.
Mamish, I will. It's a phenomenal point, and I think that's the beauty of the land of Eretz HaKodesh, that Hashem, it's the Jewish people's land, and now that you spend a year here, it's not just about going out, and obviously you go out, you have a good time with your friends, you go see the land in your own way, but specifically utilizing Israel as your classroom is really, really unique. This conversation has been mamish phenomenal, and I can't even thank you enough. I have one final question for you as we end off, and that is for any person who's listening to this, no matter what stage they're at in life, if you had one message that was like, take this message for the rest of your life with you and keep it message in a bottle style, what would that message be?
Pisas Rebbe writes that when we read Anochi Hashem Elokecha, we typically think that Anochi refers to I am Hashem, your God. Anochi is Hashem. Pisas Rebbe writes that Anochi is not about Hashem, Anochi is about us. In order for us to have a meaningful relationship with God, we need to understand what our Anochi is. Who am I? What am I? What makes me tick? What makes my heart beat? What makes my soul sing? If we're able to identify those pieces of who we are as individuals, then we can have meaningful relationships with Hashem and ultimately have meaningful relationships with those people around us.
That was short and so sweet. Like mamish, it was a great word, and I resonate with that. Like you gotta, you gotta, it's a lot of things in life come back to yourself, and especially your connection with Hashem. And I cannot agree with more. And by the way, I really. I mean this. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation, and hope if people got this far in an episode, and they want to contact you and they want to learn more about Midreshet Ora, I'll put all the details in the show notes so people can click it, they can check it out, and just really a huge yashkoch for taking the time, and it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you for everything. Really, I look forward to the next one also, and I appreciate your time and your interest, and really an honor to spend time with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Rav. I hope you guys enjoyed my conversation with Rabbi Dr. Noam Weinberg. I took a lot actually from that schmooze with him, and really just understanding the importance of how we need to be as real as we can in our avodas Hashem. And for all the girls that are thinking about Midreshet Ora for next year, hopefully you'll get a taste of that by being under the auspices of Rabbi Dr. Noam Weinberg in terms of how much he could give you in life and just hadracha and helping you find your direction after spending that most impressive year of your life in seminary. So thank you guys so much for watching. Stay tuned for next week. The next week's episode is where I interviewed 4 seminary ambassadors, Ryan Rackman, Eliana Weiner, Eden Fussman, and Hodea Greenwald. They sat down with me for about an hour, and we discussed everything that goes into the decision of picking a seminary from what they went through a year ago. You can mark it down on your calendars. It was phenomenal, and I cannot wait for you guys to listen to it next week. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys soon.